Hi everyone, this is Ryan from Blockchain Markets, and welcome to another episode. Today I'm with Xingshu Dong, CEO of Zilliqa. So hi Xingshu, and welcome to Blockchain Markets.
Hello Ryan, very nice to be here.
No, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to talking to the whole blockchain markets community. It's one of the most one of the projects that gets people more excited about, and I got a lot of requests from people in the community of talking about Ziliqa. So thanks for taking the time.
No problem, thank you.
So before we start, for the ones that don't know you, if you can give us a brief background of yourself, and then we just jump into more Ziliqa itself.
Sure. I'm from the technical background. I used to work on different aspects of cybersecurity. I worked on cybersecurity for web systems and then for larger scale systems such as smart grid, Internet of Things, and transportation systems. And then I started to work on blockchain because that was, a very cool technology, very new to me. It actually took me quite a while to sort of understand what blockchain protocols were about. And then I started to work on private blockchains for commercial deployments for, let's say, securities trading and for e-commerce and some of the other applications. And then from last year onwards, we started to realize if we want to scale even further with our technology, we have to open it up to become a public blockchain platform. So that's how we started the Ziliqa project.
Interesting. So you started more on the private blockchains, and then you saw the potential of public blockchain.
Right. I mean, technically speaking, there are many more challenges if you want to move the technology from the private blockchain setting to the public blockchain platform.
Mm-hmm. Now, speaking of Ziliqa, for the ones that don't know about Ziliqa, can you give us a brief explanation of what Ziliqa is?
Yes. So Ziliqa is a new public blockchain, and our objective is to achieve much higher as well as scalable throughput, while at the same time maintaining very strong security to defend against attacks. So that is reflected in terms of the core protocol design. That is also sort of manifested in how we design our own smart contract language, where smart contracts can be verified for its security and property, security and correctness properties in a very formal way. So that's sort of the project we are working on.
Cool. Yeah, that's one of the things that sets Ziliqa apart, is mainly that focus on scalability, on high throughput. So maybe I guess the question is why is throughput so important? Why did you decide to have that as your main focus for this project?
I think once the public blockchains become sort of closer to real world applications, not just as an experimental platform, people already realize that 10 transactions per second or 50, even 15 transactions per second just wouldn't be sufficient, because transactions in the payment systems will require hundreds to even thousands of transactions a second. And if you want to run such things on blockchain, it's just not feasible today. And recently, all these decentralized games, such as kitties and shrimps, farms, they all also sort of made this bottleneck much more obvious on top of the blockchain platforms. So that's why I think scalability is really one of the biggest hurdles for people to actually adopt the blockchain platform. And of course, we had this advantage where we had the first research paper on applying sharding onto the public blockchain. So that's how we started everything. And we also assembled a team with diverse background in cybersecurity. We think we can get things right, not just making blockchains much faster, but also making sure that things are very secure during this process.
Interesting. Now that you mentioned sharding, maybe we can you can explain also for the ones that don't know what sharding is, and how does that help Ziliqa be different than other solutions, and how does that help Ziliqa scale?
And sharding is a concept from the database community. And when applying that to the blockchain space, different people may have slightly different ideas. And sometimes, such differences can be also quite significant. What we do at Ziliqa is to divide the network of computers into different groups. And during the processing of the next set of transactions, basically validating the next set of transactions, we can divide those into different groups where each group will be processing a subset of the transactions to be validated. And then they will propose their own micro blocks containing the correct set of transactions they had worked on. And then finally we merge all such micro blocks into the final block. One key difference between our sharding scheme and some of the others is that we think it's much more feasible today to not split the states, the global state, between different shards. So that means once a final block is generated, all the information about this final block is actually propagated to all nodes across the entire network, regardless of whether you are in one shard or another. So this gives us a lot of advantage in terms of trying to avoid excessive cross-shard communications, and also makes reshuffling of nodes between different shards much easier to get better resilience. So this is sort of the high-level idea for our sharding scheme in Ziliqa.
Cool, interesting. Maybe we can discuss also now the something related to the consensus mechanism. If I understand well, Ziliqa doesn't use proof of work, and well, in one part that we can discuss later, if I understand well, you're using proof of work, but it's not mainly for, it's not proof of work or proof of stake, but pBFT. Maybe you can explain what that is, and then how does it work?
Yeah. So now just imagine that consensus is about a lot of people trying to trying to make a decision that is agreed upon by most of the people. Then the first thing we need to do in this scenario would be, say, all these people will need to get into a room. And then after they get into the room, they somehow, let's say by simple voting, they can get a common decision. In Ziliqa, we can't let everyone just walk into the room arbitrarily, because then the room will be overcrowded and then you may have too many bad guys which will outvote the good guys. So number one is to get the entry ticket into this decision-making room. You have to do a little bit of work to prove that you are just one person. Otherwise, you can bring 100 or even 1,000 people together with you. So that is a proof of work. It's a puzzle that you have to solve before you can enter into the room to make decisions. And then once you enter into the room for a certain period of time, let's say 1 hour, 2 hours, you don't have to do proof of work again. All you need to do is to participate in this practical presenting fault tolerance, pBFT algorithm, where with that algorithm, everyone in the room can just run through the algorithm and get a consensus view on the decision. So that's how Ziliqa works at the very high level. And pBFT is known to be more efficient in terms of electricity cost. So it's not as costly as, for example, POW. But this pBFT doesn't really scale when you have too many players trying to get a consensus. For example, when you have 200 nodes and beyond, the pBFT performance becomes much worse. So what we do is we bring in another technique called multi-signature, which significantly reduces the size of the messages sent across during the process of pBFT. So that also significantly improves the efficiency of reaching a consensus with that algorithm.
Very interesting. Maybe we can discuss now another question that I got a lot before this interview is about smart contracts. People to know about how are smart contracts different from the smart contracts that are running on Ethereum, for example.
Yeah. Yes, we have a new smart contract language called Ziliqa. What we want to solve is that we want to have much more secure smart contracts, because there are many vulnerabilities and very subtle bugs that exist with today's smart contracts. We think that we need a fundamental change to this landscape. and we have to put security as a top priority when we design the new smart contract language. So what Ziliqa provides is, once you write smart contracts in Ziliqa, it becomes possible to have formal verification. And what formal verification means is that you can actually prove certain properties mathematically on these smart contracts. So as we demonstrated, in our Kickstarter demo, so let's say we have a Kickstarter program codified into our Ziliqa smart contracts. What we can show is that we can mathematically prove that with this program, funds received from one contributor will be properly secured in the smart contracts, and it will not be leaked to another person. And when refunds happens, one person can only get back whatever he has contributed, not more than that. So these are like important properties for a Kickstarter smart contract. But then with Ziliqa, you can actually very formally, very rigorously prove that certain properties will not be evaluated whatsoever once you have that smart contract program.
Perfect. Thanks. Thanks for answering that, because that was, I think, like the main question that I got before, mainly from developers that were planning to start developing on Ziliqa, and they were thinking also on what was the name of the language you said?
It's called Ziliqa.
Ziliqa. I guess it's on the. You have all that information on the website, and people can go to your GitHub as well to learn more on that.
Right. We have a high-level paper on Ziliqa, and we are going to release more details, I think, in June.
Perfect. Speaking of time frames, and now that you mentioned June, maybe we can start discussing the roadmap for this year. But just before we jump into that, I'd like to discuss the part of the mining. You mentioned a bit of POW. If we can get a little bit more on that matter, that's another question that many people ask on how is that mining different from Bitcoin? You already touched upon that a bit, but maybe you can talk a bit more specifically on that.
So because mining in Ziliqa involves two parts. Number one is periodically, let's say every 1 hour, 2 hours, you need to participate in this POW for a few minutes, and then you get into sort of the network of Ziliqa. And once you are in, you run the pBFT protocol. So practically speaking, probably people will run the POW algorithm using GPU because it's just ET hash. It's the same thing as Ethereum's mining algorithm. And once they are in, they will probably rely on their CPU and network card to run the pBFT and exchange the messages. So what we are different, very different from today's Bitcoin and Ethereum mining is that we don't have this winner taking all scenario where we will actually divide the mining reward. Either it's for the block reward or it's for the transaction fees collected almost evenly across all the nodes who participate in this process. So this is very interesting. It provides much lower variance in terms of mining rewards, and people can basically just stick around, and they're sort of guaranteed to some small portion of the rewards each round, as long as they perform as expected. So I think that's very interesting. And of course, comparing to today's Nakamoto protocols, the energy footprint for mining on Ziliqa is going to be also much smaller. So I think that's another good piece of news.
Perfect. Thank you. Maybe now we can jump into the roadmap. I think it would be interesting to talk about what's coming for the rest of 2018, and then maybe we can discuss also then at the end the big picture and the long-term vision that you and your team have for Ziliqa.
Sure, happy to. So the slightly short-term goals are we want to roll out our mainnet by the end of September after some thorough testing, and around that time we also want to release a few very interesting high-throughput decentralized applications where people can, play with them, understand that, what are the benefits brought in by Ziliqa as high throughput platform, and try to think about some new applications there. That's, for the short term. And from next year onwards, we hope that our mainnet will be very stable, and we can have more and more applications coming on board to develop interesting and unprecedented high throughput apps. We will probably move on to work on some of the other problems that are at least equally important and interesting, just like we didn't have time to work on so far. So, for example, privacy of transactions and interoperability with different blockchains, and how do we deal with these, huge volume of data generated when your blockchain can process many more transactions a second. So these are some of the challenging problems that we are going to work on for next year. And I think, it's really difficult for me to plan out all these technical milestones for the next 5 years. But then what we really want to achieve in 2 to 3 years time is to become this go-to platform for high throughput and high security apps. So once some developer wants to say, hey, I have this app and it seems to require, a lot of transactions per second, and I do care about security, I hope at that time that Ziliqa becomes the default platform for them to go to. So that's, our objective.
And where do you see in terms of the apps being developed on Ziliqa's platform? Do you see, because of the focus on high throughput, do you see them? Are you focusing more on encouraging dApps related to financial sector, more like payments?
Yeah, I think these are all good examples, but we don't just target specific sectors. For example, we are rolling out a 5 million USD grant, and this is just to help people get started with their coolest ideas. And we are giving some examples of what are the apps we are hoping to see. For example, stablecoin, decentralized exchanges, auctions, or things like that. But then these are just really some indication of common interest. People can always think about other interesting applications as well. And we also realize that to have vibrant application scene on top of Ziliqa, we also need to build very strong tools for developers and users. So that's also about the focus of this 5 million grant to the community.
Interesting. Now that you mentioned community, and maybe we can discuss that, because that's a very important part of a project, how big the community is, how involved the community is. How have you seen the growth of the Ziliqa community and in the past months?
Yeah, we are very grateful to our community. So from the beginning, they were very strong in terms of supporting us, in terms of thinking through all the problems that we're going to address. And I think even up to today, we are still feeling very strong support from our community. Of course, the sort of composition of the community has been evolving. But I think it's very important for us to keep working very closely with them. At this stage, the development is still largely undertaken by the core team. But going forward, we are going to be more and more open to work with the community. And that will start with some of the tools we hope the community can help us build with the 5 million grant. But that's just the beginning. I think community has been and will always be a very critical factor for Ziliqa's success.
Yeah, I definitely agree on that. The community is it's key if you want to achieve mass adoption and people actually using the platform and developing on that. So yeah, that's very true.
All right.
Now you mentioned also about the core team. How big is the team at the moment of Ziliqa?
We have about 15 people, and then slightly more than half of them are developers.
And where are you guys based?
We are based in Singapore.
In Singapore, perfect. And I guess, well, then as long later on, as you said, like the community will be more part of that, like an extension of the team. So then
exactly.
spread out through the
And
world.
we're also going to have a branch office in London very soon. So we'll be more decentralized.
Oh, that's great news. Well, I think like we covered a lot of different things through we went through the focus on throughput and why is that important, the difference between the smart contracts on Ethereum and on Ziliqa. We went through sharding as well, mining, the consensus algorithm, the pBFT. We went through the roadmap, the long-term vision as well. I don't know if it's anything else that we didn't discuss, Xingshu, that you would like to talk about.
I think we are good. You know, we really look forward to the next milestones we are going to deliver.
Yeah, I think that also the community is really excited about what's coming in the short term, but also as we discussed from next year on, also in the long-term vision as well. So I think we discussed everything, and then for all you guys that are watching, if you have more questions about Ziliqa, please go to the Telegram or discuss it, or if you want to take it to social media and ask other questions. They have also a lot of a very interesting FAQ section on the website that you can. It's very detailed, so you can go through that. Otherwise, just ask them directly. So I'd like to thank you, Xingshu, for your time to talking to the blockchain markets community. And I hope you the best with the future of Ziliqa.
Thank you very much, Ryan.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye bye, and bye you all, guys.
Bye.